You're too old and fragile to watch the children anymore, Evelyn. We need someone younger, more capable. Those words from my daughter-in-law still echo in my mind as I sip my morning coffee on my new balcony in sunny St. Petersburg, Florida. The same woman who used to beg me to babysit when she needed free childcare now lives in the house I left behind in Ohio, calling me frantically 67 times, wondering where their free housing went. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning it all began, I was folding tiny clothes in my laundry room, preparing for another weekend of watching my twin grandsons, Marcus and Mason, when my son Derek walked into the kitchen with his wife Amanda trailing behind him. Their expressions were serious, the kind of look parents wear when they're about to deliver disappointing news to a child. I had been watching those boys every weekend for 3 years, ever since Amanda decided to pursue her real estate license and Derek started working double shifts at the manufacturing plant. What began as occasional help during their tight financial period had evolved into a permanent arrangement where I provided free childcare, meals, and often overnight stays when their schedules demanded it. Amanda cleared her throat, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against my kitchen counter. She was always particular about her appearance, even when dropping off the boys in their pajamas at 6 in the morning. Her blonde hair was styled in loose waves, makeup applied flawlessly despite the early hour, designer handbag clutched like armor against any criticism. Derek fidgeted beside her, unable to meet my eyes. At 32, my son still carried the guilt of childhood disappointments on his face when delivering bad news. I recognized the expression from when he was 7 and had accidentally broken my favorite vase while playing baseball in the living room. "Mom, we need to talk about the babysitting situation," Derek began, his voice carrying that apologetic tone that immediately put me on alert. "Amanda and I have been discussing it, and we think it might be time for some changes." I set down the small shirts I was folding, giving them my full attention. Changes usually meant more responsibilities in our family dynamic, more ways I could help support their growing family and career ambitions. After my husband Richard passed away 4 years ago, staying busy with my grandsons had become my primary source of joy and purpose. "What kind of changes?" I asked, settling into my usual chair at the kitchen table where we'd had countless family discussions over the years. Amanda stepped forward, taking the lead in a conversation that clearly made Derek uncomfortable. "Well, Evelyn, the boys are getting more active now that they're 4. They require constant supervision, and frankly, we're concerned about your ability to keep up with them." The words hit me like cold water. Keep up with them? I had been successfully managing 2 energetic preschoolers every weekend for 3 years, handling everything from playground visits to bedtime stories, from scraped knees to temper tantrums. What exactly was I failing to keep up with? "I don't understand," I said carefully, studying their faces for clues about this sudden concern for my capabilities. "Has something happened? Have I done something wrong with the boys?" Derek finally met my eyes, and I could see the discomfort there, the knowledge that this conversation was unfair but necessary for reasons I didn't yet understand. "It's not that you've done anything wrong, Mom. You've been wonderful with Marcus and Mason. It's just that Amanda and I think they need someone younger, more energetic." Younger, more energetic. At 68, I apparently had crossed some invisible line where my experience and love for my grandchildren became less valuable than youth and stamina. Never mind that I had raised Derek and his sister Jennifer successfully, that I had managed a household and career simultaneously for decades, that I had navigated the challenges of widowhood while maintaining my independence and health. Amanda's voice took on that patronizing tone she used when explaining simple concepts to the boys. "We found a lovely young woman named Jessica who specializes in childcare. She's 25, has a degree in early childhood education, and she's available for the flexible schedule we need." Professional childcare. The implication was clear. My decades of mothering and grandmothering experience meant nothing compared to a college degree and youthful energy. The boys I had rocked to sleep as infants, taught to tie their shoes, comforted through nightmares, apparently needed professional supervision rather than their grandmother's loving care. "How much does this professional childcare cost?" I asked, though I suspected money wasn't really the issue here. Derek and Amanda exchanged glances, a married couple's silent communication that excluded me entirely. "We've worked it into our budget," Derek said vaguely. "Amanda's real estate commissions have been really good lately, and my overtime has been consistent." Their budget, the same budget that had been too tight to afford daycare 3 years ago when they first asked for my help. The same budget that had required them to move into my basement apartment rent-free when their previous landlord raised their rent. Apparently, their financial situation had improved enough to pay for professional childcare, but not enough to live independently. I looked around my kitchen, noting the high chair that still sat in the corner for the boys' visits, the refrigerator covered with their artwork, the cabinet I had child-proofed specifically for their safety. Evidence of 3 years of dedicated grandmothering about to be declared inadequate and unnecessary. "When does this change take effect?" I asked, proud of how steady my voice remained despite the hurt building in my chest. "Actually," Amanda said, not quite meeting my eyes, "we've already arranged for Jessica to start this weekend. We didn't want to put you in an awkward position by asking you to train your replacement or anything like that." My replacement? The casual way she referred to me as something replaceable, like an outdated appliance or worn-out furniture, revealed exactly how she viewed my role in their lives and my grandson's care. Derek shifted uncomfortably, clearly recognizing the insensitivity of his wife's statement. "What Amanda means is that we thought it would be easier for everyone if we made a clean transition. You've done so much for us over the years, Mom. You deserve to have your weekends back, to do things for yourself." Do things for myself, as if caring for my grandsons was a burden I had been shouldering rather than the highlight of my week. As if the hours spent reading stories, building block towers, and teaching them to ride their bicycles in my driveway were sacrifices rather than precious memories I treasured. And what about holidays, family gatherings? Will Jessica be handling those as well? The sarcasm in my voice was sharper than I intended, but their casual dismissal of my relationship with the boys felt like a rejection of my entire identity as their grandmother. Amanda's perfectly glossed lips pursed in annoyance. "Of course not, Evelyn. We're not cutting you out of their lives entirely. You'll still be their grandmother. We're just professionalizing their childcare needs." Professionalizing. The word hung in the air like an insult wrapped in business terminology. My love, my experience, my devotion to those boys was being replaced by professional services, as if emotional bonds could be outsourced and family relationships were simply inefficient business arrangements. I stood up slowly, my movements deliberate and controlled despite the anger building inside me. "I see. And this decision was made without consulting me because you assumed I would agree that I'm no longer capable of caring for my own grandsons?" Derek had the grace to look ashamed. "Mom, it's not that we think you're incapable. It's just that the boys are at an age where they need more structured activities, educational programming, things that someone with formal training might be better equipped to provide." Structured activities, educational programming. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Marcus and Mason were 4 years old. They needed love, attention, safety, and the kind of patient guidance that came from years of experience raising children. They needed someone who celebrated their small victories, comforted their disappointments, and loved them unconditionally. Apparently, those qualifications were now considered inadequate. Amanda checked her phone, clearly eager to end this uncomfortable conversation. "We really should get going. We have appointments to show houses this afternoon, and Jessica is expecting us to bring the boys over to meet her properly." They were already moving forward with their plan, treating this conversation as a formality rather than a discussion. My opinion, my feelings, my relationship with my grandsons were irrelevant details to be managed rather than important factors to be considered. I walked them to the door, watching as they gathered the boys' overnight bags from the living room where I had packed them earlier, anticipating another weekend of shared adventures and quiet moments. Marcus ran over to hug my legs, his small arms wrapping around me with the unconscious affection of a child who trusted completely in my presence and care. "Grandma Evie, are you coming to play with us tomorrow?" he asked, his bright eyes looking up at me with expectation. Derek gently pulled him away before I could answer. "Grandma Evie is going to be busy tomorrow, buddy, but you'll get to meet Jessica. She has lots of fun games and activities planned." Mason joined his brother, both boys pressing close to me as if sensing some change in the adult dynamics around them. These children who had spent countless hours in my care, who knew every corner of my house, who had their own special cups and favorite snacks in my pantry, were being told that someone else would be better equipped to care for them. I kissed both boys on their foreheads, breathing in the familiar scent of their shampoo and the lingering sweetness of childhood. "You two be good boys, and remember that Grandma Evie loves you very much." Amanda was already at the door, keys in hand, ready to transition from this uncomfortable family moment to her more manageable professional responsibilities. "Thanks for understanding, Evelyn. I know this is probably an adjustment, but it really is for the best." For the best? According to whom? Certainly not according to me, and I doubted the boys would agree when they realized their weekend routine with Grandma had been permanently altered. But my opinion apparently carried no weight in decisions about my own grandchildren's care. After they left, I stood in my suddenly quiet house, surrounded by evidence of the life I had built around being needed and useful to my family. The refrigerator still hummed with their favorite foods. The living room still contained toys and books selected specifically for their visits. My schedule still revolved around their needs and activities. I walked upstairs to what I had started thinking of as their room, though it was officially my guest bedroom. Twin beds with matching blue comforters, a bookshelf filled with children's stories, a toy chest Derek had built when the boys were toddlers. Everything arranged for comfort and familiarity, creating a space where my grandsons felt completely at home. The afternoon stretched ahead of me, empty in a way I hadn't experienced since before the boys became regular visitors. Usually, Saturday afternoons were filled with their chatter, their requests for snacks, their endless questions about why grass was green to how airplanes stayed in the sky. Now, silence filled the spaces where their voices should have been. I tried to read, but concentration proved impossible. Every few pages, my mind wandered to what the boys might be doing with their new professional caregiver, whether they were asking for me, whether they understood why their routine had suddenly changed without explanation or preparation. The house felt different without the anticipation of their arrival, without the familiar rhythm of preparing for their visit. I had scheduled my entire week around their weekends with me, grocery shopping for their favorite foods, planning activities based on the weather and their interests, ensuring my home was always ready to welcome them safely and lovingly. That evening, I called my daughter Jennifer in Phoenix, needing to voice my hurt and confusion to someone who might understand the depth of my relationship with the boys. Jennifer listened patiently as I explained the morning's conversation, the casual dismissal of my capabilities, the sudden replacement by professional childcare. "Mom, I hate to say this, but maybe they have a point," Jennifer said gently. "Marcus and Mason are getting more active, and you're not as young as you used to be. Maybe this is their way of looking out for your well-being too." My own daughter suggesting that age had somehow diminished my ability to care for children. The same daughter I had raised as a single mother after her father's death, managing work and parenting responsibilities simultaneously. The same daughter who had called me countless times for advice about her own children, trusting my experience and judgment completely. "Jennifer, I'm 68, not 98. I'm in good health, I have plenty of energy, and I've been successfully caring for those boys for 3 years without incident. This isn't about my age or capabilities, this is about something else entirely." But even as I spoke the words, doubt crept into my mind. Was I really as capable as I believed? Had I missed signs of my own declining abilities? Were Derek and Amanda protecting the boys from something I couldn't see about myself? That night, sleep came in fragments, interrupted by replaying every interaction I'd had with the boys in recent months, searching for evidence that I had somehow failed them or put them at risk. I found nothing concerning, only memories of laughter, learning, and the deep satisfaction that came from being needed and loved by my grandchildren. Sunday morning arrived without the familiar sound of little feet running down my hallway, without excited voices calling for Grandma Evie to wake up and make pancakes. The kitchen felt too large, too quiet, designed for a family that no longer gathered there regularly. I made coffee for one instead of three, skipping the small portions of orange juice and chocolate milk that had become part of my morning routine. The newspaper remained unread because usually the boys demanded attention before I could focus on adult concerns like current events or weather forecasts. Now, silence filled the spaces where their voices should have been. I tried to read, but concentration proved impossible. Every few pages, my mind wandered to what the boys might be doing with their new professional caregiver, whether they were asking for me, whether they understood why their routine had suddenly changed without explanation or preparation. The house felt different without the anticipation of their arrival, without the familiar rhythm of preparing for their visit. I had scheduled my entire week around their weekends with me, grocery shopping for their favorite foods, planning activities based on the weather and their interests, ensuring my home was always ready to welcome them safely and lovingly. That evening, I called my daughter Jennifer in Phoenix, needing to voice my hurt and confusion to someone who might understand the depth of my relationship with the boys. Jennifer listened patiently as I explained the morning's conversation, the casual dismissal of my capabilities, the sudden replacement by professional childcare. "Mom, I hate to say this, but maybe they have a point," Jennifer said gently. "Marcus and Mason are getting more active, and you're not as young as you used to be. Maybe this is their way of looking out for your well-being too." My own daughter suggesting that age had somehow diminished my ability to care for children. The same daughter I had raised as a single mother after her father's death, managing work and parenting responsibilities simultaneously. The same daughter who had called me countless times for advice about her own children, trusting my experience and judgment completely. "Jennifer, I'm 68, not 98. I'm in good health, I have plenty of energy, and I've been successfully caring for those boys for 3 years without incident. This isn't about my age or capabilities, this is about something else entirely." But even as I spoke the words, doubt crept into my mind. Was I really as capable as I believed? Had I missed signs of my own declining abilities? Were Derek and Amanda protecting the boys from something I couldn't see about myself? That night, sleep came in fragments, interrupted by replaying every interaction I'd had with the boys in recent months, searching for evidence that I had somehow failed them or put them at risk. I found nothing concerning, only memories of laughter, learning, and the deep satisfaction that came from being needed and loved by my grandchildren. Sunday morning arrived without the familiar sound of little feet running down my hallway, without excited voices calling for Grandma Evie to wake up and make pancakes. The kitchen felt too large, too quiet, designed for a family that no longer gathered there regularly. I made coffee for one instead of three, skipping the small portions of orange juice and chocolate milk that had become part of my morning routine. The newspaper remained unread because usually the boys demanded attention before I could focus on adult concerns like current events or weather forecasts. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. Derek's name appeared on the caller ID, and for a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Maybe they had reconsidered. Maybe the boys had asked for me. Maybe this was all a misunderstanding that could be resolved with honest conversation. "Hi, Mom." Derek's voice carried that carefully casual tone that meant he was about to ask for something. "How are you doing today?" "I'm fine," I replied, though fine was hardly accurate. "How are the boys adjusting to their new arrangement?" "Actually, that's why I'm calling. Jessica had to cancel today. Her grandmother had a medical emergency, and she needs to drive to Cleveland to help her family. Amanda and I both have critical appointments we can't reschedule, and we were wondering if you might be available to watch Marcus and Mason. Mom, please. Amanda has 3 showings scheduled, and I can't miss this overtime shift. We really need your help. Need. They needed my help when it was convenient, when their professional solution proved inadequate, when their careful planning fell apart. But they didn't need my experience, my love for the boys, or my consistent presence in their lives. Perhaps you should call other professional caregivers in the area, I suggested. I'm sure there are agencies that provide emergency services for situations exactly like this. Derek's frustration became audible in his breathing. Mom, those services are expensive, and they don't know the boys like you do. Marcus and Mason would be comfortable with you. Comfortable with me. The acknowledgement that our relationship provided something valuable, something that couldn't be easily replaced by strangers, even professional ones. But comfort and familiarity were apparently less important than youth and credentials when it came to their regular care. I understand your dilemma, Derek, but I'm not available to help today. You'll need to find another solution. After I hung up, I sat in my living room, surrounded by the toys and books and evidence of my role as the boys' grandmother, feeling both proud of standing up for myself and heartbroken about missing time with Marcus and Mason. They would spend the day with strangers or in some impersonal childcare facility because their parents valued professional credentials over family bonds. An hour later, Amanda called, her voice tight with stress and barely contained anger. Evelyn, Derek told me you refused to help with the boys today. I have to say, I'm really disappointed. We're family, and family helps each other in emergencies. Family helps each other. The irony was almost laughable. When had they helped me with anything? When had they considered my needs, my feelings, or my relationship with the boys before making major decisions that affected us all? Amanda, yesterday you explained that I was too old and inadequate to care for Marcus and Mason on a regular basis. Today, you want me to provide emergency childcare because your professional solution failed. I'm confused about whether I'm capable or incapable. That's completely different, and you know it. This is an emergency. Jessica had a family crisis. And what happens when Jessica gets sick, or takes vacation, or finds a better job? Will I continue to be your emergency backup, available whenever your primary plan fails, but dismissed when you don't need me? Amanda's voice rose in frustration. We're trying to do what's best for the boys. Professional childcare provides structure and educational opportunities that, frankly, Evelyn, you can't match. Jessica has training in child development, early learning techniques, behavioral management. She brings expertise that makes her worth the investment. Expertise that made her worth the investment. My years of experience raising children, my intuitive understanding of Marcus and Mason's individual personalities, my ability to comfort them when they were frightened or excited about their small victories, apparently counted for nothing against formal education in youth. I understand your position completely, I said calmly, and I'm sure Jessica will provide excellent professional care when she's available, but I'm no longer available for emergency coverage. The silence that followed was thick with anger and disbelief. Amanda wasn't accustomed to anyone in Derek's family refusing her requests or challenging her decisions. She had grown comfortable with my compliance, my willingness to adjust my life around their needs without question or complaint. Fine, she said finally, her voice cold with controlled fury. But don't expect us to come running when you need help with something. Family relationships are supposed to be reciprocal. Reciprocal. The word hung in the air after she disconnected, highlighting the complete absence of reciprocity in our actual relationship. When had they ever adjusted their plans to help me? When had they sacrificed their convenience for my needs? When had they treated my time and energy as valuable rather than freely available? That afternoon, I walked through my neighborhood alone, noting details I had missed during countless walks with the boys. The elderly man who always waved from his porch swing, the woman who tended her garden with patient dedication, the teenagers who gathered at the corner store with the easy confidence of youth.
I thought about Amanda's accusation that family relationships should be reciprocal, and I began to inventory exactly what our reciprocal relationship had looked like over the past 3 years. They had received free childcare worth thousands of dollars, emergency babysitting whenever their plans changed, holiday hosting, birthday celebration organizing, and constant emotional support for their parenting challenges. In return, I had received the privilege of loving my grandsons and the satisfaction of being useful to my family. No financial contribution for the food the boys ate at my house, no consideration for my schedule when making their requests, no acknowledgement of the value I provided or the sacrifices I made to accommodate their needs. The more I analyzed our arrangement, the clearer it became that reciprocity had never been part of the equation. I was expected to give freely and gratefully, to consider their needs before my own, to accept their decisions about my role in the family without question or complaint. That evening, Derek called again, his voice carefully controlled but carrying undertones of frustration and disappointment. "Mom, Amanda found emergency childcare for today, but it cost us $200 for 6 hours. That's not sustainable if Jessica has more family emergencies." $200 for 6 hours. Professional childcare was indeed expensive, which explained their original request for my help and their current frustration with my refusal. Apparently, the value of my time and energy became clear only when they had to pay someone else to provide the same services. "I'm sorry you had to spend unexpected money, Derek, but that's the cost of the professional childcare you decided was necessary. These are the kinds of expenses you'll need to budget for when relying on outside services." "Mom, you're being unreasonable. We're not asking you to be their primary caregiver anymore. We're just asking for occasional help when our regular arrangement falls through." "And I'm explaining that I'm not available to be your backup plan. You made a decision about my role in the boys' lives, and I'm respecting that decision by making other plans for my time." Derek's voice carried a note of desperation that reminded me of his childhood, when consequences for his choices became uncomfortable and he looked to me to solve problems he had created. "What other plans? Mom, you don't have anything else going on. You've built your whole schedule around watching Marcus and Mason." The casual dismissal of my life outside of their needs stung more than he probably intended. Yes, I had organized my time around caring for the boys, but that didn't mean I had no other interests, no other possibilities, no other ways to find meaning and purpose. "Derek, I'm 68 years old, not dead. I'm perfectly capable of creating a fulfilling life that doesn't revolve around being available whenever you need me." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad and pen, something I hadn't done since my teaching days when lesson planning required careful organization and strategic thinking. If I was truly going to create a life independent of their emergency needs, I needed to plan as carefully as I had once planned curriculum for my students. What did I want my life to look like? For 4 years, since Richard's death, I had drifted into a routine that revolved around Derek's family and their needs. Grocery shopping for their visits, cooking meals they would enjoy, arranging my social activities around their schedule, defining my worth through their approval and need for my services. But before I was Derek's mother and the boy's grandmother, I had been Evelyn Morrison, a woman with her own interests, ambitions, and dreams.
Somewhere in the process of grieving Richard's loss and filling the emptiness with family obligations, I had lost track of who I was when I wasn't taking care of other people. I began making lists, something I had always found helpful when facing complex decisions or major changes. What activities had I enjoyed before Richard's illness consumed our time? What dreams had I deferred while caring for him, then for Derek's family? What would I do if I had complete freedom to choose my own priorities? Travel appeared at the top of every list. Richard and I had planned to see the country after his retirement, but cancer had stolen those years and those adventures. We had researched destinations, collected brochures, marked places on maps that we never visited because treatment schedules and medical appointments became our focus. Florida had always appealed to me. Not the touristy beaches that attracted spring breakers, but the quieter communities where retirees created new lives filled with sunshine and interesting activities. Richard had been particularly interested in St. Petersburg, with its vibrant art scene and walkable downtown, its reasonable cost of living and active senior community. The more I thought about it, the more appealing the idea became. What was keeping me in Ohio now? Derek's family had made clear that they didn't need my regular presence in their lives. Jennifer lived in Phoenix with her own busy career and social obligations. My house, while comfortable and familiar, was really too large for one person and filled with memories that sometimes felt more sad than comforting. I opened my laptop and began researching St. Petersburg, Florida, with the same methodical approach I had once used to plan lessons for my students. Cost of living, housing options, climate, cultural activities, healthcare facilities, transportation. Everything I would need to know to make an informed decision about relocating. The numbers were encouraging. My house in Ohio, purchased decades ago for a fraction of its current value, could finance a comfortable apartment or small house in Florida with money left over for travel and activities. Social Security and Richard's pension would stretch much further in a state with no income tax and lower overall expenses. But more than the financial advantages, the emotional appeal grew stronger with every article I read about people who had started over in retirement, who had chosen adventure and independence over familiar routine and family obligation. These were people who had decided that their remaining years should be lived for their own happiness rather than everyone else's convenience. I spent Sunday evening creating a detailed plan, the kind of systematic approach that had made me an effective teacher and would now help me become an effective life changer. Research phase, decision phase, preparation phase, execution phase. Each step carefully planned and thoroughly considered. By bedtime, I had filled several pages with notes, websites to explore, phone calls to make, decisions to finalize. For the first time since Richard's death, I felt genuinely excited about the future, energized by possibilities that had nothing to do with other people's needs or expectations. Monday morning brought clarity and determination I hadn't felt in years. I called the first real estate agent on my list, a woman named Carol Peterson who specialized in helping people relocate from northern states to Florida. Her voice was warm and professional, experienced in guiding people through exactly the kind of major life change I was contemplating. "I understand you're interested in the St. Petersburg area," Carol said after I explained my situation in general terms. "It's a wonderful community for retirees who want to stay active and engaged. What's your timeline for making a move?" Timeline. Derek and Amanda had established their timeline for changing my role in their lives without consulting me. Now I would establish my own timeline for changing my entire life without consulting them. "I'd like to move as quickly as possible," I replied, surprised by my own certainty. "Ideally within 6 weeks." "That's ambitious, but definitely doable, especially if you're flexible about specific neighborhoods and housing types. Are you planning to rent or buy initially?" We talked for 45 minutes about the practical aspects of relocating, the steps involved in selling a house in Ohio while purchasing one in Florida, the logistics of moving belongings and establishing residency in a new state. Every question Carol asked confirmed that I had thought this decision through carefully, that I was making a rational choice rather than an emotional reaction. After we hung up, I walked through my house with new eyes, seeing it not as the comfortable retreat I had shared with Richard, but as an asset to be converted into freedom and independence. 4 bedrooms when I needed one, a large yard that required maintenance when I preferred convenience, space for hosting family gatherings that no longer happened regularly. The afternoon brought a call from Derek that I almost didn't answer, reluctant to deal with more pressure about emergency babysitting or guilt about my unavailability. But curiosity won, and I picked up after 4 rings. "Mom, I wanted to apologize for yesterday," Derek said, though his tone suggested the apology was strategic rather than heartfelt. "Amanda and I were stressed about the childcare situation, and we probably didn't handle it very well." Probably didn't handle it very well. A masterful understatement that acknowledged fault without accepting responsibility or promising change. "I appreciate the apology, Derek. These transitions are difficult for everyone involved." "Actually, that's part of why I'm calling. Amanda had an idea that might work better for everyone. What if we scheduled regular monthly visits instead of weekly ones? That way, you'd still have time with the boys, but it wouldn't be as demanding physically, and Jessica could handle the routine care." Monthly visits. My regular, meaningful relationship with my grandsons reduced to occasional appointments scheduled around their convenience and their professional caregivers' availability. The suggestion revealed exactly how little they understood about grandparent relationships, or how much they valued my emotional connection with the boys. "That's an interesting suggestion," I said carefully,
But I don't think it addresses the real issue here. What do you mean? I thought this was about us thinking you needed less responsibility with childcare. Derek, this isn't about responsibility or physical demands. This is about respect and consideration and the value you place on my relationship with Marcus and Mason. You made a major decision about my role in their lives without consulting me, then expected me to be available for emergency coverage when your new arrangement failed. Derek's silence suggested he was processing this perspective for the first time, considering that my feelings about the situation might be legitimate rather than simply inconvenient. Mom, we never meant to hurt your feelings. We just thought professional childcare would be better for the boy's development. Better for the boy's development. The phrase that had become their justification for everything, as if loving grandparent care was somehow detrimental to child development, as if professional credentials were more important than emotional bonds and family relationships. I understand that's what you believe, I replied, and I respect your right to make parenting decisions based on your values and priorities. But I also have the right to make decisions about how I spend my time and energy. Of course you do. That's why we thought monthly visits would be perfect, less demanding, but still meaningful. Less demanding, still meaningful. They truly didn't understand that our relationship couldn't be scheduled like a dental appointment or reduced to manageable doses of family obligation. Derek, I need to tell you something, and I want you to listen carefully. I've decided to make some major changes in my life. I'm selling the house and moving to Florida. The silence that followed was so complete I wondered if the call had dropped. Then Derek's voice returned, higher-pitched and confused. Moving to Florida? Mom, what are you talking about? You can't just move to Florida.
Actually, I can. I'm 68 years old. I own my house outright, and I have no obligations that require me to stay in Ohio. I've already contacted a real estate agent and started the process. But what about us? What about the boys? Mom, this is crazy. You can't make a decision like this without talking to the family. Talk to the family? The same family that had made decisions about my future without consulting me, that had dismissed my capabilities and replaced my services with professional alternatives. Now suddenly family consultation was important when my decisions affected their convenience. Derek, when did you and Amanda consult me about hiring Jessica? When did you ask how I felt about being replaced as the boy's regular caregiver? When did you consider my feelings before announcing that I was too old and inadequate to provide proper care for my grandsons? That's completely different. We were making decisions about our children's care, and I'm making decisions about my own life. The difference is that my decisions don't negatively impact anyone else's well-being or financial situation. Derek's voice took on the desperate edge I remembered from his childhood when consequences for his choices became uncomfortable. Mom, you're overreacting to a simple childcare decision. Moving to Florida is extreme. Let's talk about this rationally. Rationally? As if my decision to pursue happiness and independence was irrational, while their decision to dismiss and replace me was perfectly reasonable. Derek, I've given this a great deal of thought, and my decision is final. I'll be putting the house on the market this week and should be relocated within 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Mom, that's insane. You can't sell a house and move to another state in 6 weeks. And what if you hate it there? What if you get lonely or need help? You're making a huge mistake. What if I needed help? The concern that had never manifested when they were making decisions about my role in their lives was suddenly paramount when my independence threatened their security. Derek, I've lived independently for 4 years since your father died. I've managed my finances, maintained my health, and taken care of myself quite successfully. I think I can handle living in Florida. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen, feeling lighter than I had in months. The conversation with Derek had confirmed that I was making the right decision. Their reaction wasn't about concern for my well-being or genuine desire for my happiness. It was about losing access to the services I provided and the security of knowing I would always be available when they needed me. For years, I had defined my worth through their need for me.
measuring my value by how much I could do for them and how willing I was to sacrifice my own interests for their convenience. But their willingness to replace me when it served their purposes had demonstrated exactly how replaceable they considered me to be. The phone rang again within 10 minutes. Amanda this time, her voice tight with controlled anger and strategic concern. "Evelyn, Derek told me about your Florida plan. I have to say, I'm very worried about you. This seems like a very impulsive decision, and I'm concerned that you're not thinking clearly." Not thinking clearly? The woman who had spent thousands of dollars on real estate courses while living rent-free in my basement, who had dismissed my childcare capabilities one day and requested my emergency help the next, was questioning my mental clarity? "Amanda, I appreciate your concern, but I assure you that my decision is well considered and carefully planned. I've researched the location, the costs, the logistics, and I'm confident that this move will improve my quality of life significantly. But what about your support system here? Your friends, your doctor, your familiar routines? Moving to a completely new place at your age seems very risky." My support system? The friends I rarely saw because my weekends were dedicated to childcare? The social activities I had skipped because Derek's family needed me to be available? The life I had organized entirely around their schedules and priorities? Amanda, what support system are you referring to? My social life has revolved around your family's needs for the past 3 years. As for medical care, there are excellent healthcare facilities in Florida, and my medical records are easily transferred. But we're your family, Evelyn. We're here for you when you need us. Here for me when I needed them? The family that had been too busy to include me in their vacation plans? Too concerned about my age to trust me with regular childcare? Too focused on their own needs to consider my feelings when making major decisions about their family structure? Amanda, I understand this is unexpected, but my decision is final. I've already begun the process, and I'm looking forward to this new chapter in my life. The silence on her end stretched long enough that I wondered if she was calculating how this development would affect their childcare arrangements, their housing situation, or their general sense of security knowing I was always available as backup support. "Well," she said finally, her voice carrying that sharp edge she used when things weren't going according to her plans. "I hope you've thought about how this will affect Marcus and Mason. They're going to be devastated when they learn their grandmother has abandoned them." Abandoned them? The accusation hit like a physical blow, designed to inflict maximum guilt and emotional damage. According to Amanda's logic, my refusal to remain eternally available for their convenience constituted abandonment, while their decision to replace me with professional childcare was simply good parenting. Amanda, I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm relocating to pursue my own happiness and independence. The boys will always be my grandsons, and I'll always love them. But my life doesn't have to revolve around being geographically convenient for your family's needs. That's a very selfish way to look at family relationships, Evelyn. When you have grandchildren, you have responsibilities. You can't just run off to Florida because your feelings were hurt. Selfish. Responsibilities? The same woman who had lived rent-free in my basement for years while pursuing her real estate ambitions was lecturing me about selfishness and responsibility. The irony was breathtaking in its complete lack of self-awareness. Amanda, let me ask you something. When you decided to hire Jessica without consulting me, were you considering your responsibilities to maintain my relationship with the boys? When you announced that I was too old to provide adequate care, were you thinking about my feelings? When you called me for emergency babysitting after rejecting my regular help, were you concerned about treating me with respect? Her pause confirmed that she had never considered any of those questions, that my role in their lives had always been viewed through the lens of their convenience rather than mutual respect or genuine family obligation. That's completely different. We were making decisions about our children's well-being, and I'm making decisions about my own well-being. The difference is that my decisions don't require anyone else to sacrifice their time, energy, or resources. Amanda's voice rose in frustration.
Fine, move to Florida. But don't come crying to us when you realize you've made a terrible mistake and you need help getting back home. Help getting back home. The assumption that my adventure would inevitably fail, that I would require their rescue and assistance, that independence was beyond my capabilities. Her prediction revealed exactly how little she understood about my competence or determination. After hanging up, I felt a peculiar combination of sadness and liberation. Sadness for the family relationships that had become so transactional, so focused on convenience rather than love. Liberation from the weight of their expectations and the burden of their conditional acceptance. Tuesday morning brought the real estate photographer, an energetic young man named Tom who spent 3 hours capturing every angle of my house with professional lighting and careful staging. Watching him work, I felt like I was documenting the end of one life and the beginning of another. "Beautiful home," Tom commented, adjusting his camera settings in the living room where I had hosted countless family celebrations. "The hardwood floors and original moldings will definitely appeal to buyers. How long have you lived here?" 35 years, I replied, though it felt like longer when I considered all the life events these walls had witnessed. "My husband and I raised our children here." "Are you downsizing for retirement?" Downsizing for retirement. Such a simple explanation for such a complex decision. I was downsizing my obligations, my willingness to be taken for granted, my acceptance of being treated as expendable backup help rather than valued family member. "Something like that," I agreed. Carol Peterson arrived that afternoon with listing paperwork and a detailed marketing strategy. Her professional assessment valued my house higher than I had expected, reflecting the desirable neighborhood location and the improvements Richard and I had made over the decades. "The market is very strong right now for homes in this price range," Carol explained, spreading photographs and documentation across my kitchen table. "I expect multiple offers within the first week, possibly above asking price if we see competitive bidding." Multiple offers above asking price. The house that had sheltered Derek's family for years, that had provided them with free housing and reduced their living expenses significantly, was about to become the financial foundation for my independent future. "How quickly could we close if we receive a strong cash offer?" I asked, thinking about my 6-week timeline and the logistics of coordinating a sale with my Florida purchase. "Cash deals can close in 2 to 3 weeks if there are no complications. We'd want to time it carefully with your Florida purchase to minimize the overlap." That evening, I called Jennifer in Phoenix to inform her about my decision before she heard about it from Derek. My daughter's reaction was more measured than her brother's panic, though equally skeptical about my timing and motivations. "Mom, are you sure this isn't just a reaction to the babysitting situation? Moving to Florida seems pretty drastic." Drastic. Everyone seemed convinced that my decision was excessive, that a more moderate response would be more appropriate. But moderate responses to disrespectful treatment had gotten me nowhere for years. Sometimes drastic situations required drastic solutions. "Jennifer, this isn't just about babysitting. It's about how I want to spend the remaining years of my life. I've been taking care of other people for decades, and now I want to focus on my own happiness and goals." "But you barely know anyone in Florida. What if you get lonely? What if you need help with something? At least here you have family nearby." Family nearby. The same family that had excluded me from their vacation planning, replaced me with professional childcare, and expected me to remain available for their convenience while dismissing my value in their daily lives. "Jennifer, loneliness isn't about geography. I felt lonelier in this house surrounded by family who take me for granted than I ever felt when your father and I traveled or spent time by ourselves." My daughter's silence suggested she was processing this perspective, possibly recognizing some truth in my observation about the nature of loneliness and connection. "Mom, Derek is really upset. He's worried that he's somehow driven you away, that this is punishment for the childcare decision." Punishment. As if my pursuit of independence and happiness was vindictive rather than rational, as if choosing my own priorities over their convenience was somehow malicious. "This isn't punishment, Jennifer. This is self-preservation.
I've spent 4 years since your father's death defining myself through other people's needs, and I've realized that approach isn't sustainable or fulfilling. What can Derek do to fix this? He feels terrible about how things went with Amanda's childcare decision. Fix this. The assumption that my decision was a problem to be solved rather than a choice to be respected revealed exactly how my family viewed my autonomy and independence. Jennifer, there's nothing to fix. I'm not moving to Florida because I'm angry or hurt, although both of those emotions played a role in my decision. I'm moving because I want to create a life that makes me happy, and that life doesn't involve being perpetually available for other people's emergencies while being dismissed when they don't need me. Wednesday brought 3 showings and 2 serious inquiries about my house. Carol called that evening with optimistic updates about buyer interest and the likelihood of multiple offers by the weekend. One couple loved the kitchen updates, and another family was very impressed with the neighborhood schools, she reported. Both indicated they'd be submitting offers tomorrow. Neighborhood schools. The same schools where Derek and Jennifer had learned and grown, where I had volunteered countless hours during their childhood, where my grandchildren would never attend because their parents had decided professional childcare was superior to grandmother care. That's wonderful news, Carol. Any indication of their price range or timeline preferences? Both mentioned they could close quickly and work around your schedule. The younger couple is pre-approved for financing, and the family indicated they might pay cash if that would expedite the process. Cash payment for quick closing. Everything was aligning perfectly for my timeline, as if the universe was supporting my decision to choose independence over obligation. Thursday morning brought the official listing announcement and immediate online activity. Carol had scheduled an open house for Sunday, but early interest suggested we might have solid offers before the weekend. Derek appeared at my door Thursday evening unannounced and clearly agitated. His face carried that expression of determined intervention I remembered from his teenage years when he decided that direct confrontation was necessary to change my mind about some decision he found unacceptable. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, stepping into my foyer without invitation. "This Florida thing is getting out of hand. Amanda found your house listing online and she's convinced you're having some kind of breakdown." Breakdown. The clinical term that pathologized my decision, turning rational choice into mental health concern that required their intervention and management. Derek, I'm not having a breakdown. I'm making a carefully planned decision about how to spend my retirement years. There's nothing irrational or concerning about relocating for better weather and new experiences. He followed me into the kitchen, his agitation filling the space between us. "Mom, you're selling the family home without discussing it with anyone. You're moving to a state where you don't know anybody."
You're abandoning your grandchildren because you're angry about a childcare decision. That doesn't sound rational to me. Abandoning my grandchildren, the same accusation Amanda had made, designed to inflict guilt and shame, to paint my choice as selfish abandonment rather than reasonable self-determination. Derek, I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm relocating to pursue my own happiness. Marcus and Mason will always be my grandsons, but my relationship with them doesn't require me to remain geographically convenient for your family's needs. But what about holidays, birthday parties, school events? You'll miss everything important in their lives. Will I? When was the last time you included me in planning any of those events? When did you last ask what would work for my schedule before making family plans? When did you consider my preferences about how to spend holidays or celebrate occasions? Derek's expression shifted slightly, possibly recognizing that their family planning process rarely included consideration for my availability or preferences, that I had always been expected to adjust my schedule around their decisions rather than being consulted as an equal participant. That's different, Mom. We knew you'd want to be there for the boys. We didn't think we needed to formally invite you to family events. Exactly. You assumed I would always be available, always willing to adjust my plans around yours, always grateful to be included in whatever way was convenient for you. But you never considered what I might want or need or prefer. Derek sat down heavily at my kitchen table, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Mom, I don't understand what we did wrong. We've been grateful for everything you've done for us. We just thought professional childcare would be better for the boy's development. Derek, the problem isn't that you made a different childcare decision. The problem is how you made it and communicated it. You dismissed my capabilities, replaced my services without consultation, then expected me to remain available for emergencies when your professional solution failed. But we didn't mean it that way. We never meant to hurt your feelings or make you feel unappreciated. Intent versus impact. The eternal disconnect between what people meant to communicate and what they actually conveyed through their actions and decisions. Derek, I understand you didn't intend to hurt me, but impact matters more than intent. The impact of your decision was that I felt devalued, dismissed, and taken for granted. The impact of expecting emergency availability while rejecting regular involvement was that I felt like backup equipment rather than a beloved family member. Derek's face showed genuine confusion, as if he had never considered that his decisions might have emotional consequences beyond his immediate family circle, that my feelings might be legitimate even if they were inconvenient. So what do you want us to do? We've already hired Jessica. The boys are starting to get comfortable with her. We can't just undo everything now. I don't want you to undo anything. I want you to understand that your decisions have consequences, and one of those consequences is that I'm choosing to prioritize my own happiness and independence rather than remaining available for your convenience. But moving to Florida isn't prioritizing your happiness. It's running away from family. It's giving up on relationships that matter. Running away from family. The accusation that painted my choice as cowardice rather than courage, as avoidance rather than active pursuit of a better life. Derek, I'm not running away from anything. I'm running towards something. I'm choosing sunshine over snow, new experiences over familiar routine, independence over obligation. For the first time in decades, I'm making decisions based on what will make me happy rather than what will make everyone else comfortable. And what about us? What about the boys? Don't our feelings matter? Of course your feelings matter, but they don't override my right to make decisions about my own life. You made decisions about my role in your family based on what you thought was best. Now I'm making decisions about my future based on what I think is best. Derek stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the backyard where Marcus and Mason had played on the swing set I had installed for their visits. Mom, please don't do this. Let's figure out a better arrangement for childcare, something that includes you more. We can make this work. Derek, this isn't about childcare arrangements anymore. This is about respect and reciprocity and building a life that reflects my own values and priorities. I've made my decision, and I'm excited about my future in Florida. But moving to Florida isn't prioritizing your happiness. It's running away from family. It's giving up on relationships that matter. Running away from family. The accusation that painted my choice as cowardice rather than cowardice, as avoidance rather than active pursuit of a better life. Derek, I'm not running away from anything. I'm running towards something. I'm choosing sunshine over snow, new experiences over familiar routine, independence over obligation. For the first time in decades, I'm making decisions based on what will make me happy rather than what will make everyone else comfortable. And what about us? What about the boys? Don't our feelings matter? Of course your feelings matter, but they don't override my right to make decisions about my own life. You made decisions about my role in your family based on what you thought was best. Now I'm making decisions about my future based on what I think is best. Derek stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the backyard where Marcus and Mason had played on the swing set I had installed for their visits. Mom, please don't do this. Let's figure out a better arrangement for childcare, something that includes you more. We can make this work. Derek, this isn't about childcare arrangements anymore.
This is about respect and reciprocity and building a life that reflects my own values and priorities. I've made my decision, and I'm excited about my future in Florida. Friday brought 2 formal offers on my house, both above asking price, and both with flexible closing dates that accommodated my timeline. Carol scheduled a conference call to review the terms and help me choose between a young family offering quick financing approval and an investor offering cash payment with faster closing. The investor's offer is $15,000 higher and includes a 10-day closing guarantee, Carol explained. The family's offer includes some contingencies but shows genuine interest in maintaining the property's character. Maintaining the property's character. The phrase that suggested emotional connection to the house beyond its investment potential. Buyers who would appreciate the care Richard and I had invested in creating a warm family home. "What's your professional recommendation?" I asked, though my heart was already leaning toward the family despite the financial advantage of the investor's offer. Honestly, both offers are excellent. The investor's cash payment eliminates financing risk, but the family's offer suggests they'll love the house the way you've loved it. Love the house the way I had loved it. The consideration that trumped $15,000 and 10-day convenience. I wanted my home to shelter another family's happiness rather than become someone's rental income property. I'll accept the family's offer, I decided. Can we negotiate the closing date to align with my Florida purchase timeline? Absolutely. They indicated flexibility on timing, and 30-day closing should work perfectly for coordinating with your relocation plans. That afternoon, I received a call from Marcus and Mason's school, something that hadn't happened in months since Derek and Amanda handled all educational communication directly. "Mrs. Morrison, this is Patricia Williams from Little Learners Academy. I'm calling because Marcus mentioned that you're moving away, and I wanted to confirm whether you'll still be available for our Grandparents' Appreciation Lunch next month." Grandparents' Appreciation Lunch, an event I had attended for 2 years running, proudly celebrating my role in the boys' lives and educational journey. Marcus had mentioned my move to his teacher, processing the information in whatever way 4-year-olds understand major changes in their world. "Actually, Miss Williams, I will be relocating to Florida before the lunch event. I won't be able to attend this year." "Oh, that's disappointing."
The boys always light up when they see you at school events. Marcus and Mason talk about their Grandma Evie quite frequently. They'll miss having you here. They'll miss having me here. The simple statement from someone outside our family drama, someone who observed my relationship with the boys without the complicated dynamics of adult conflicts and custody decisions. "I'll miss being there too," I replied honestly. "But I hope they'll understand that sometimes grown-ups have to make difficult decisions about their lives." Saturday morning brought a call from Amanda, her voice tight with controlled anger and strategic manipulation. "Evelyn, Derek told me about your conversation Thursday night. I think you're being incredibly selfish and vindictive. You're punishing children for adult decisions they had nothing to do with." Vindictive, selfish, punishing children. The accusations designed to inflict maximum guilt, to paint my choice as morally reprehensible rather than personally necessary. "Amanda, I'm not punishing anyone. I'm choosing to live my life according to my own priorities and values. The boys will always be my grandsons, but that relationship doesn't require me to organize my entire existence around your family's convenience. What kind of grandmother abandons her grandchildren because she's angry about childcare arrangements? Marcus asked Derek yesterday when you're coming to visit again. What are we supposed to tell him? You can tell him that Grandma Evie loves him very much and that she's moving to Florida to start a new adventure. Children understand more than adults give them credit for, and they're often more adaptable than the grown-ups in their lives. This is insane, Evelyn. You're throwing away relationships that matter because your ego was bruised by a simple parenting decision." Ego. The accusation that reduced my legitimate feelings about disrespectful treatment to vanity and pride, that dismissed my need for dignity and consideration as shallow self-importance. Amanda, this isn't about ego. This is about being treated with respect and valued as more than emergency backup help. You made a decision that my regular involvement in the boys' lives wasn't valuable enough to continue, then expected me to remain available when that decision created inconvenience for you. We never said your involvement wasn't valuable. We just thought professional childcare would provide better structure and educational programming. And I'm sure it will. Jessica sounds like a lovely young woman with excellent credentials. I wish you all success with the arrangement. The silence that followed suggested Amanda had expected more argument, more emotional manipulation, more willingness to engage in conflict that might lead to compromise and my eventual capitulation. "Fine," she said finally, "but don't expect us to support this ridiculous Florida fantasy when it falls apart and you need help getting your life back together." Help getting my life back together. The assumption that my pursuit of independence would inevitably fail, that I would require their rescue and assistance, that autonomy was beyond my capabilities at my age. Sunday's open house attracted steady traffic throughout the afternoon. Carol managed the crowds while I retreated to a nearby coffee shop, unable to watch strangers evaluate my home and envision their own lives within its walls. "Excellent turnout," Carol reported when she called that evening. "Several families expressed serious interest, and I expect additional offers tomorrow." The couple whose offer you accepted stopped by and seemed even more enthusiastic after seeing the house again. Additional offers that would come too late, from people who would miss the opportunity to make my house their home because I had already chosen buyers who appreciated its character and potential for sheltering another family's happiness. Monday morning brought the signed purchase agreement and official closing date, exactly 30 days from acceptance. Carol coordinated with my Florida agent to ensure seamless timing between selling my Ohio home and purchasing my St. Petersburg condo. "Everything's falling into place perfectly," Carol observed. "Your buyers are delighted, their financing is solid, and the timeline works beautifully with your Florida plans." That afternoon, Derek appeared at my door again, this time accompanied by Amanda and both boys. Marcus and Mason ran to me immediately, wrapping their small arms around my legs with the unconscious affection of children who hadn't yet learned that adult relationships were complicated by hurt feelings and wounded pride. "Grandma Evie," Marcus called excitedly. "Daddy says you're going on a big trip." A big trip. The 4-year-old's interpretation of permanent relocation, processing major life changes through the limited vocabulary of childhood experience. "That's right, sweetheart. Grandma's going to live in Florida, where it's sunny and warm all the time." "Can we come visit?" Mason asked, looking up at me with eyes that reflected Derek's childhood expression when he wanted something special. "Of course you can visit," though I suspected their parents had no intention of facilitating such trips, that this conversation was primarily designed to demonstrate my callous abandonment of innocent children. Amanda stepped forward, her expression carefully arranged to suggest reasonable concern rather than manipulative anger. "Evelyn, we wanted to give you one more chance to reconsider this decision. The boys love you so much and they don't understand why you're leaving them." One more chance to reconsider. The phrasing that suggested my decision was a mistake requiring correction rather than a choice deserving respect. That my priorities were wrong rather than simply different from theirs. "I'm not leaving the boys, Amanda. I'm relocating to pursue my own happiness." There's a significant difference between abandonment and independence. Derek lifted Mason, who had begun climbing on my furniture with the comfortable familiarity of a child who considered this house his second home. "Mom, please think about what you're giving up. Family dinners, birthday parties, Christmas mornings with the boys, you'll miss all the important moments." Important moments. The celebrations and gatherings that had increasingly excluded my input or preferences, where I was expected to provide labor and enthusiasm without having any voice in planning or decision-making. "Derek, when was the last time you asked me what I wanted for Christmas morning? When did you consult me about birthday party plans or family dinner menus? You've been making decisions about family events without considering my preferences for years. Because we knew you'd go along with whatever made the boys happy.
You've always been flexible about family plans. Flexible. The word that described my willingness to subordinate my own desires to everyone else's convenience, to accept whatever role they assigned me without complaint or negotiation. Amanda shifted impatiently, clearly frustrated that this conversation wasn't proceeding toward the outcome she had expected. Evelyn, we understand you're feeling unappreciated, but moving to Florida is an extreme overreaction. Why don't we plan a nice family vacation together instead? Somewhere warm where you can relax and we can all spend quality time together. A family vacation together.
The solution that would temporarily address my need for warmer climate while maintaining their access to my services and availability that would provide the appearance of inclusion without actually changing the fundamental dynamics of our relationship. That's a lovely thought, Amanda, but vacation isn't what I'm seeking. I'm looking for permanent change, for a life that reflects my own priorities rather than everyone else's convenience. Marcus tugged on my shirt, demanding attention with the innocent persistence of childhood. "Grandma Evie, will you have a swimming pool in Florida?" "I will indeed have access to a swimming pool, sweetheart, and a beach where I can walk every morning." "That sounds fun. Can we swim with you?" The simple question that cut through all the adult complexity and manipulation, the pure desire for continued connection that had nothing to do with childcare arrangements or family politics. "Of course you can swim with me when you come to visit," I replied, kissing his forehead and savoring the sweet scent of his hair, the weight of his small body trusting completely in my arms. Derek and Amanda exchanged glances, their silent communication excluding me from whatever decision-making process was occurring between them. "Mom," Derek said finally, "what would it take for you to stay? What do we need to change to make this work?" What would it take for me to stay? The question that revealed their assumption that my decision was negotiable, that the right combination of promises and concessions could restore the status quo they found comfortable and convenient. "Derek, this isn't about changing arrangements or making different agreements. This is about me choosing to live according to my own values and priorities rather than organizing my entire existence around other people's needs." "But we're your family. Don't family relationships require some sacrifice and compromise?" "Yes, they do. But sacrifice and compromise should be mutual, not one-sided. For years, I've been the one sacrificing my preferences and compromising my desires to accommodate your needs. Now I'm choosing to prioritize my own happiness." Amanda's patience finally snapped, revealing the anger she had been trying to control. "Fine, move to Florida, but don't come crawling back when you realize you've made a huge mistake and destroyed your relationship with your grandchildren for nothing." Destroyed my relationship with my grandchildren for nothing? The accusation that my pursuit of personal fulfillment was worthless, that my desire for respect and independence was trivial compared to their convenience and my availability. "Amanda, I'm not destroying anything. I'm choosing to build something new. My love for Marcus and Mason isn't dependent on geographical proximity or my willingness to provide free services for your family." After they left, I sat in my living room, surrounded by the toys and books and evidence of my relationship with the boys, feeling both sad about the conflict and relieved about my decision. Their visit had confirmed that they viewed my choice as a problem to be solved, rather than a decision to be respected. That their primary concern was losing access to my services, rather than genuine worry about my well-being. Tuesday brought the final paperwork for my house sale and confirmation of my Florida closing date. Everything was proceeding smoothly toward my 6-week timeline, as if the universe was supporting my decision to choose independence over obligation. Carol called that evening with updates about the buyer's financing approval and home inspection scheduling. "Everything looks perfect for your closing date," she reported. "The buyers are thrilled, their bank is cooperative, and we should have a seamless transaction." That night, I walked through my house one final time as its current owner, noting details I would miss and elements I was eager to leave behind. The kitchen where I had prepared countless meals for Derek's family. The living room where I had hosted gatherings they attended but rarely planned. The bedrooms that had sheltered visitors who took my hospitality for granted. But also the master bedroom where Richard and I had shared our final conversations about dreams and fears,
The dining room where we had celebrated holidays and anniversaries. The garden where I had planted flowers that would bloom long after I moved to Florida. This house had been the setting for both my greatest joys and my most recent disappointments. Leaving it felt like closing one chapter of my life and opening another, like choosing future happiness over past comfort. Wednesday morning brought a call from Jennifer, her voice carrying less skepticism and more genuine concern than our previous conversations. "Mom, Derek called me about the house sale and your closing date. This is really happening, isn't it?" "It really is, Jennifer. I close on both properties next Friday, and I'll be relocated to St. Petersburg by the following weekend. Are you scared? Moving to a completely new place where you don't know anyone seems terrifying to me." Scared. The emotion I had been avoiding acknowledging, the natural response to major life changes that involved leaving familiar comfort for unknown possibilities. "I'm nervous about some aspects," I admitted, "but I'm more excited than scared. For the first time in years, I'm making decisions based on what will make me happy rather than what will make everyone else comfortable." "Mom, can I ask you something honestly? Is this really about the babysitting situation, or is there more to it?" The question I had been asking myself for weeks, trying to separate reasonable response from emotional overreaction, trying to distinguish between justified change and vindictive rebellion. "Jennifer, the babysitting decision was the catalyst, but the underlying issues go much deeper. I've spent years organizing my life around other people's needs, and somewhere in that process, I lost track of who I am when I'm not taking care of someone else. I think I understand that. After my divorce, I had to rediscover who I was outside of being Mark's wife. It was scary, but ultimately liberating." Liberating. The word that captured exactly what I hoped to achieve through this dramatic change. The freedom that came from choosing my own priorities rather than accepting other people's definition of my role and value. That's exactly what I'm hoping to find, Jennifer. Liberation from expectations and obligations that don't reflect my own values or desires. Well, if this is what you need to do to be happy, then I support your decision, and I promise to visit you in Florida, assuming you'll have room for your daughter occasionally. Room for my daughter. The assurance that my pursuit of independence didn't mean rejection of family relationships, that choosing my own priorities didn't require cutting ties with people I loved. "Jennifer, you'll always have room in my life and my home, whether that's in Ohio or Florida or anywhere else I choose to live." Thursday brought the pre-closing inspection and final walkthrough with my buyers, a young couple named Sarah and Michael Chen, who looked at my house with the same loving attention Richard and I had shown when we first toured it decades ago. "We love what you've done with the kitchen," Sarah commented, running her hand along the countertops I had selected during our major renovation 5 years ago. "The whole house feels so warm and welcoming." Warm and welcoming. The exact atmosphere Richard and I had tried to create. The feeling we had wanted our home to convey to everyone who entered its walls. "We've been very happy here," I replied. "I hope you'll be equally happy." Michael examined the built-in bookshelves in the living room, clearly envisioning how he would arrange his own collection. "Are you moving far away?" "Florida. I'm ready for sunshine and new adventures." "That sounds wonderful. We appreciate you taking such good care of this place. It's clear you've loved living here." Loved living here. Past tense, acknowledging that love could coexist with readiness for change, that appreciating what had been didn't prevent choosing what might be. Friday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth for Ohio in March, as if the weather was cooperating with my decision to pursue permanent sunshine. The closing attorney's office bustled with activity as multiple transactions proceeded simultaneously. I sat across from Sarah and Michael Chen, watching them sign documents that would make my house their home, that would transfer ownership of the place where I had been happiest and most heartbroken, where I had raised children and grieved losses, where I had learned to live independently after Richard's death. "Congratulations, Mrs. Morrison," the attorney said, handing me the certified check that represented 35 years of mortgage payments, home improvements, and appreciation. "Your house has been officially transferred to Mr. and Mrs. Chen." The check that would fund my independence, that would provide the financial foundation for creating a life that reflected my own values rather than everyone else's expectations.
That afternoon, I drove to my new bank to deposit the check and wire the down payment for my Florida condo. The teller, a friendly woman about Jennifer's age, processed the transaction with professional efficiency. "That's quite a substantial deposit," she observed. "Are you making a major purchase?" "I'm buying a new life," I replied, surprising myself with the clarity of that phrase. Saturday morning brought the moving truck and professional packers I had hired to handle the logistics of relocating my entire existence. Watching strangers wrap my belongings in paper and bubble wrap felt like watching my past being carefully archived for transport to my future. "Where are we headed today, Mrs. Morrison?" the head mover asked, consulting his paperwork. "St. Petersburg, Florida," I replied, 1,400 miles towards sunshine and independence. The men worked efficiently, transforming rooms full of furniture and memories into carefully labeled boxes and protected furniture pieces. By afternoon, everything I owned was loaded into the truck that would carry it south, while I flew to Florida to meet the movers at my new address. Derek and Amanda didn't come to say goodbye. I hadn't expected them to, given our recent conversations and their disapproval of my decision. But their absence felt symbolic, a final confirmation that they viewed my choice as abandonment rather than transformation, as rejection rather than self-determination. Jennifer called that evening from Phoenix, her voice warm with support and encouragement. "Mom, I'm proud of you for choosing your own happiness. I know this is scary, but I think you're going to love your new life." "I think so too, Jennifer. For the first time in years, I feel genuinely excited about the future." Sunday morning, I walked through my empty house one final time, my footsteps echoing in rooms that had sheltered decades of family life. The kitchen, where I had taught Derek and Jennifer to cook, the living room where we had opened Christmas presents, the bedrooms where I had read bedtime stories and comforted nightmares. But also the spaces where I had been taken for granted in recent years, where my contributions had been dismissed, where my feelings had been considered less important than other people's convenience. Standing in the foyer where Derek had announced my inadequacy as a grandmother, where Amanda had accused me of selfishness, where I had made the decision to prioritize my own well-being, I felt complete closure on this chapter of my life. The airport shuttle arrived precisely on time, driven by a cheerful man who helped me load my suitcases and carry-on bags containing everything I would need for my first weeks in Florida while waiting for the moving truck to arrive. "Vacation or relocation?" he asked as we drove toward the airport. "Complete life transformation," I replied, watching the familiar neighborhoods of my past disappear through the shuttle windows. The flight to Tampa was smooth, filled with anticipation and a sense of finality I hadn't experienced since Richard's funeral. As the plane descended through puffy white clouds toward the Florida coastline, I pressed my face to the window like a child seeing the ocean for the first time. Palm trees lined the roads below, and everything looked green and welcoming under brilliant sunshine. My realtor Patricia met me at baggage claim, holding a sign with my name and wearing the kind of warm smile that immediately made me feel welcome. She was about 50, with sun-streaked hair and the relaxed confidence of someone who genuinely loved living in Florida. "Mrs. Morrison, welcome to your new home state," she called, approaching with genuine enthusiasm. "How was the flight?" "Perfect," I replied, meaning it completely. "I can't believe how warm it is here in March." 78 degrees and sunny, just like the weather app promised. Wait until you see your new place. The previous owner left it immaculately maintained, and the morning light in your living room is absolutely spectacular. The drive from the airport to St. Petersburg took 40 minutes through landscapes that looked nothing like Ohio. Tropical plants I couldn't name, architecture that prioritized outdoor living, people walking and cycling in lightweight clothing that would be impossible in March back home. "Tell me about the neighborhood," I said as we pulled into a development called Sunset Gardens, where Mediterranean-style buildings were arranged around courtyards and walking paths. "It's primarily retirees, but not exclusively. Lots of people who relocated here after major life changes, career transitions, divorces, that sort of thing. Very welcoming community for people starting over." Starting over, the phrase that perfectly captured what I was doing, the complete reconstruction of my daily life and social connections around my own preferences rather than inherited obligations. My new condo was on the second floor, with a balcony overlooking a courtyard where several residents sat reading in comfortable chairs. Patricia handed me the keys with a ceremonial flourish. "Welcome home, Evelyn. I hope this place brings you exactly the happiness you're looking for." The interior was smaller than my Ohio house, but filled with light from large windows and sliding glass doors. The kitchen opened to the living area, creating a sense of spaciousness despite the compact layout. Everything was painted in soft blues and whites that complemented the coastal atmosphere. Standing on my balcony, I could see the community pool where several people were swimming laps or lounging in the afternoon sunshine. No one looked familiar, which felt liberating rather than lonely. These were potential friends I would choose based on genuine compatibility rather than family obligation or geographical accident. The moving truck arrived the next morning, and professional movers efficiently arranged my furniture in spaces that felt both familiar and completely new. My favorite reading chair fit perfectly by the living room window, and Richard's desk looked right at home in the small office space. By afternoon, my condo looked lived in despite being in an entirely new state. I made coffee in my new kitchen and sat on my new balcony, watching strangers who might become friends enjoy their afternoon activities. My phone had been remarkably quiet since leaving Ohio. No calls from Derek demanding updates about my safety or arrival. No texts from Amanda expressing concern about my well-being. Their silence felt confirmation that their previous panic was more about losing my services than genuine worry about my happiness. That evening, I walked to the nearby shopping plaza to buy groceries and explore the immediate neighborhood. The grocery store was filled with products I didn't recognize, tropical fruits and specialized items that reflected the diverse population of Florida retirees from various regions and backgrounds. "First time shopping here?" asked the clerk, a friendly woman about my age with a slight New York accent. "First time living here," I replied. "Just moved from Ohio yesterday." "Oh, another refugee from winter. You'll love it here. I moved from Buffalo 5 years ago and never looked back. The people are friendly, the weather is perfect, and there's always something interesting to do." Always something interesting to do. The promise of engagement and activity that didn't depend on other people's schedules or approval, that reflected genuine choice rather than obligation. Tuesday morning, I woke naturally at 7:30 without an alarm, sunshine streaming through my bedroom windows and the sound of birds I couldn't identify singing in the courtyard below. For the first time in years, I had no one else's schedule to consider, no one's needs to anticipate, no phone calls to expect about emergency childcare or family obligations. I made coffee and sat on my balcony with the local newspaper, reading about community events and activities without checking my phone for missed calls or urgent messages. The silence from Ohio felt peaceful rather than concerning, confirmation that I had successfully extracted myself from dynamics that had become unhealthy and unbalanced. Around 10 o'clock, my phone finally rang. Derek's name on the caller ID, and I let it ring 4 times before deciding to answer. "Mom, thank God, we've been worried sick. Why haven't you been answering your phone?" "I've been settling into my new home, Derek. I didn't realize my phone had been ringing." "Your new home? Mom, you actually went through with this? You actually moved to Florida?" The disbelief in his voice suggested he had somehow convinced himself that my decision was a bluff, that I wouldn't actually follow through with such a dramatic change, that eventually I would reconsider and return to my previous role in their lives. Of course I went through with it. I told you repeatedly that my decision was final. I closed on both properties Friday, moved Saturday, and flew here Sunday. I've been in St. Petersburg for 3 days now. "But Mom, what about your life in Ohio? What about your friends, your doctors, your familiar routines?" "I'm creating new routines that reflect my own preferences rather than everyone else's convenience. As for friends and doctors, I'm perfectly capable of building new relationships and establishing new healthcare connections." "This is insane. You can't just start over at 68. You don't know anyone there. What if something happens? What if you need help?" "What if I needed help?" The concern that had never manifested when they were making unilateral decisions about my role in their family was suddenly paramount when my independence threatened their security. "Derek, I've been managing my own life quite successfully since your father died. I think I can handle living in Florida." The silence that followed suggested he was processing this information, possibly for the first time, considering that I was genuinely capable of independent living and decision-making. "Are you coming back to visit? What about Marcus and Mason?" "I'm sure I'll visit occasionally, and you're always welcome to bring the boys here. Florida is a wonderful place for children to visit, especially during Ohio winters." "But that's expensive. Flying a whole family to Florida isn't like driving across town for Sunday dinner." Expensive. The financial consideration that revealed exactly what had concerned them about my move: the elimination of convenient and free access to my services and support. "Derek, many families manage to maintain relationships across long distances. It requires more planning and investment, but it's certainly possible when the relationships are valued enough to justify the effort." Wednesday brought a knock on my door from Eleanor, my downstairs neighbor, a woman about my age carrying a plate of homemade cookies and wearing the kind of warm smile that immediately put me at ease. "I'm Eleanor Patterson," she said, extending the plate. "I saw the moving truck Monday and wanted to welcome you properly. These are my famous snickerdoodles, though I promise I won't be offended if you're not a cookie person." "I'm Evelyn Morrison, and I'm definitely a cookie person. Thank you so much for thinking of me." "We have a little informal coffee group that meets Thursday mornings in the courtyard. Nothing fancy, just neighbors getting to know each other. You're more than welcome to join us if you'd like." A coffee group with neighbors who wanted to get to know me, not because I provided useful services, but because I lived in their community and might be interesting company. The invitation felt like validation that I could build new relationships based on mutual interest rather than one-sided utility. "I would love that, Eleanor. What time should I be there?" 9 o'clock, by the fountain. Bring your own mug and whatever makes you happy. Some people bring pastries, some bring fruit, some just bring themselves. Very casual." Thursday morning, I joined 6 other residents around the courtyard fountain, each person holding a different style of coffee mug and sharing stories about their backgrounds and reasons for choosing St. Petersburg as their home. "I moved here from Michigan after my husband passed," explained Margaret, a woman with silver hair and paint-stained fingers. "Needed someplace warm where I could start painting again without feeling guilty about taking time for myself." "Divorced after 30 years," added Robert, a man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. "Realized I had no idea who I was when I wasn't being someone's husband. Florida felt like the perfect place to figure that out." Each person had a story of transformation, of choosing personal fulfillment over familiar obligation, of building new lives that reflected their authentic desires rather than other people's expectations. I felt immediately at home among people who understood the courage required for major life changes. "What brought you here, Evelyn?" asked Patricia, a former nurse from Pennsylvania. "My family decided I was too old to babysit my grandchildren, so I decided I was young enough to move to Florida and start over," I replied, surprising myself with how easily the truth came. The group laughed with understanding rather than judgment, recognizing the kind of family dynamics that drove people to choose independence over convenience. "Good for you," Margaret said emphatically. "Family can be wonderful, but not when they take you for granted or treat you like hired help." Friday afternoon brought another call from Ohio, this time Amanda's number appearing on my screen. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but decided I was curious about what she might have to say. "Evelyn, I can't believe you actually moved to Florida without discussing it with the family. Derek is devastated, and the boys keep asking when Grandma Evie is coming to visit. Amanda, I discussed my decision extensively with Derek and with you. The fact that you disagreed doesn't mean the conversation didn't happen. But we thought you'd reconsider once you calmed down about the childcare situation. We never imagined you actually go through with something this drastic. I understand this outcome wasn't what you expected, but my decision was carefully considered and thoroughly planned. I'm very happy with my new life here." "Happy? Evelyn, you don't know anyone there. You're completely isolated from family and friends. How can you possibly be happy?" "I'm building new friendships with people who share my interests and values.
I'm exploring new activities and discovering parts of myself that got buried under decades of taking care of other people.
For the first time in years, I wake up excited about the day ahead. Well, I hope you're satisfied. Marcus asked me yesterday why Grandma Evie doesn't want to see him anymore. What am I supposed to tell him? The emotional manipulation designed to inflict guilt, to paint my choice as rejection of innocent children rather than pursuit of personal fulfillment. You can tell him that Grandma Evie loves him very much and that she moved to Florida to have new adventures. Children understand more than adults give them credit for. This is ridiculous, Evelyn. You've destroyed family relationships over a simple disagreement about childcare. I hope you realize what you've thrown away. Amanda, I haven't destroyed anything. I've chosen to prioritize my own well-being after years of organizing my life around other people's convenience. That's not destruction, that's self-preservation. After hanging up, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink that I had never seen in Ohio. The conversation had confirmed that they still viewed my decision as punishment rather than liberation, as vindictive reaction rather than rational choice. But their inability to understand my motivations no longer felt like my problem to solve. I had spent too many years trying to manage their feelings and accommodate their needs. Now I was finally free to focus on my own happiness without considering their approval or disapproval. Saturday morning brought my first adventure as a Florida resident. I drove to St. Pete Beach, parked near a public access point, and walked onto sand so white it looked artificial under brilliant sunshine. The Gulf of Mexico stretched to the horizon, deeper blue than any water I had ever seen. I spent 2 hours walking the shoreline, collecting shells and watching pelicans dive for fish. Other beach walkers nodded friendly greetings, and several people stopped to share information about the best times for shelling or the most beautiful sunset viewing spots. Driving home with sand still in my shoes and salt air in my hair, I felt completely certain about my decision for the first time since leaving Ohio. This was what happiness felt like when it wasn't filtered through other people's needs or limited by their expectations. My phone showed 7 missed calls when I returned to the condo. All from Derek's number, increasingly frantic messages about needing to reach me urgently. I called him back from my balcony, watching neighbors enjoy their Saturday evening activities in the courtyard below. "Mom, finally! We've been trying to reach you all day. Where were you?" "I was at the beach, Derek. One of the advantages of living in Florida is easy access to beautiful coastlines." "You went to the beach alone? Mom, that's not safe. What if something had happened? What if you'd needed help?" "Derek, I'm 68, not 98. I'm perfectly capable of enjoying a beach safely and responsibly. But you don't know the area yet. You could have gotten lost or had car trouble or any number of problems." The concerns that revealed their assumption that I was incapable of managing basic independence, that my age had somehow rendered me helpless without their supervision and protection. I used GPS navigation and carried my cell phone. I took the same reasonable precautions any adult would take when exploring a new area. "Mom, please reconsider this whole Florida thing. Come home where people care about you and can look after you properly." "Derek, the people who care about me are the ones who support my choices and respect my autonomy. The people who want to look after me properly are the ones who value my happiness over their convenience." Sunday evening, as I prepared for my first full week as a Florida resident, my phone rang one final time. Jennifer's number, and her voice carried warmth and genuine concern rather than manipulation and guilt. "Mom, how are you settling in? Derek told me you've been hard to reach, and I wanted to make sure you're okay." "I'm wonderful, Jennifer. Better than I felt in years, actually. This move was exactly what I needed. I'm so glad to hear that. Derek and Amanda are pretty upset, but honestly, I think you made a brave choice. It takes courage to start over at any age. Thank you for understanding, sweetheart. That means more to me than you know. Mom, I'm planning to visit you in April if that works with your schedule. I'd love to see your new place and explore St. Petersburg together." "I would absolutely love that, Jennifer. April is perfect, and there's so much I want to show you." After we hung up, I sat on my balcony in the warm evening air, listening to the fountain in the courtyard and watching my neighbors enjoy their Sunday evening routines. Tomorrow, I would wake up in sunshine, join Eleanor's coffee group, explore new neighborhoods, maybe sign up for the water class I had seen advertised at the community center. For the first time in years, my future felt entirely my own. No one else's schedule to consider, no one else's needs to anticipate, no one else's approval to seek. Just endless Florida sunshine and the freedom to create whatever life would make me genuinely happy. The math teacher in me appreciated the elegant equation. Years of taking me for granted, plus dismissal of my value, had equaled my complete independence. They had solved for X without realizing they were eliminating their own access to the services they had never properly valued. Sometimes, the most important lessons required complete removal of safety nets to be properly understood. My family was about to discover exactly how much their supposed burden had actually been supporting their comfortable life, and how expensive professional replacements could be when emotional connection was no longer part of the arrangement. As I settled into my new bedroom with ocean breezes flowing through open windows, I smiled thinking about their inevitable realization that some relationships, once broken through disrespect and dismissal, couldn't be restored simply by changing tactics or offering better terms. I had found something worth more than their approval or gratitude. I had found myself again, and that discovery was worth every dollar the move had cost and every relationship it had changed. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new friendships, and new possibilities that belonged entirely to me. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.